Chapter 13 of Potash and Perlmutter, Their Co-Partnership, Ventures and Adventures. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Potash and Perlmutter, Their Co-Partnership, Ventures and Adventures by Montague Glass. Chapter 13. "Say, looky here, Abe," Morris cried one rainy March morning. "We got to get some more insurance." "What do you mean insurance?" Abe asked. "We got enough insurance, Morris. Them Rifkin fixtures ain't so valuable as all that, Morris. And even if we wouldn't already got it for $20,000 insurance, Morris, the building is anyhow fireproof. In a fireproof building, you don't got to have so much insurance." "Is that so?" Morris replied. "Well, Pinkel Brothers' building, where they got it aloft, is fireproof. And they got it also automatic sprinklers, Abe, and they somehow got burnt out anyhow." "You couldn't prove to me nothing by Pinkel Brothers, Morris," Abe rejoined. "Them people has already got 100 operators, and we ain't got one, Morris, and every operator smokes yet a cigarettel. And you know what them cigarettels is, Morris? They practically smoke themselves. So if an operator throws one of them cigarettels in a bin from clippings, Morris, that cigarettel would burn up them clippings certain sure. For my part, I wouldn't have a cigarettel in the place. And so, Morris, we wouldn't have no fire neither." "I know, Abe," Morris protested. "But the loft upstairs is vacant, and the loft downstairs is vacant, and everybody ain't so grouchy about cigarettels like you are, Abe. Might one of them lofts would be taken by a feller what is already a cigarettel fiend, Abe, and fires can start by other causes too. And then where will we be with our 20,000 insurance and all them piece goods what we got it?" "But the building is fireproof, Morris." "Sure, I know," Morris replied. "Fireproof buildings is like them gilt-edge A1 concerns what you sell goods to for 10 years maybe, and then all of a sudden when you don't expect it, one of them busts up on you. And that's the way it is with fireproof buildings, Abe. They're fireproof so long as nobody has a fire in them." Abe shrugged his shoulders and lit a fresh cigar. "All right, Morris," Abe said. "I'm satisfied. If you want to get some more insurance, go ahead. I got worry enough I should bother my head about trifles. A little money for insurance we can afford to spend it, Morris, so long as we practically throw it in the streets otherwise." "Otherwise?" Morris repeated. "What do you mean we throw it away otherwise, Abe?" "I mean that new style 3028 what you showed me this morning, Morris," Abe replied. "For a popular price line, Morris, them new capes has got enough buttons and soutache onto 'em to sell for $20 already instead of $12.50." "That's where you talk without knowing nothing what you say, Abe," Morris replied. "That garment what you seen is the window sampler what I made up for Louis Feinholz's uptown store. Louis give me a big order while you was in Boston last week, a special line of capes what I got up to him to retail at $18.50. But he also wanted me to make up for him a window sampler, just one garment to hang in the window, what would look like them special capes, Abe. You understand? Something like a diamond looks like a rhinestone. Then, when a lady sees the cape in the window, she wants to buy one just like it. So she goes into Louis' store, and then they show her one just like it, only 3 inches shorter. A yard less goods into it, about half the soutache onto it, and a dozen buttons short, Abe. Because that window garment what we made for Louis costs ourselves $25, and Louis retails the garment what he sells that lady for $18.50. And that's the way it goes." "That's a fine crook, that Louis Feinholz," Abe cried virtuously. "I wonder that you would sell people that goods at all, Morris. That feller ain't no good, Morris. I seen him go back 3 times on 400 hands up at Max Geigerman's house last week. $1 a hundred double. He's a gambler too." "Well, Abe," Morris answered, "a feller what runs a chance on auction pinochle ain't near the gambler like a feller what is willing to run a chance on his business burning out and don't carry no insurance, Abe." "Who is willing to run a chance, Morris?" Abe cried. "Just to show you I ain't willing to run a chance, I will go right down to J. Blaustein and take out a $10,000 policy, Morris." Morris colored slightly. "Why should we give it Blaustein all our business, Abe?" he said. "That feller must have got it 1,000 customers to Rudy Feinholz's one." "Who's one?" Abe asked. Rudy Feinholz's, said Morris. I thought I told you that Louis Feinholz's nephew got an insurance business on Lenox Avenue, and I promised Louis I would give the young feller a show. You promised you would give him a show, Morris? Abe repeated. You promised Louis you would give that kid nephew of his what used to run Louis's books a show? That's what I said, Abe, Morris answered. Well, all I can say, Morris, Abe declared as he put on his hat, is that I wouldn't insure it a pinch of snuff by that fellow, Morris. So if you take out any policies from him, you can pay him for yourself, Morris, because I won't. He favored Morris with a final glare and banged the door behind him. 2 hours later, when Abe re-entered the showroom, his face was flushed with triumph, and he smoked one of J. Blaustein's imported cigars. You see, Morris, he said, flourishing a folded policy, when you deal with fellas like Blaustein, it goes quick. I got here a $10,000 insurance by a first-class A number one company. Morris seized the policy and spread it out on the table. For 10 minutes he examined it closely and then handed it back in silence. Well, Morris, Abe inquired anxiously, ain't that policy all right? Morris shook his head. In the first place, Abe, he said, why should we insure the loft on 19th Street, New York, in the Manchester, Sheffield, and Lincolnshire Insurance Company of Manchester, England? Are we English or are we American, Abe? This was a poser, and Abe remained silent. And then again, Abe, Morris went on, supposing we should maybe, and I'm only saying, have a fire, Abe, then we must go all the way to Manchester, England already to collect our money, ain't it? Abe stared at his feet and made no reply, while Morris again examined the folded policy. Just listen here to these here names of the people what run the company, Abe, he said. Chairman, the Rut-on Earl of Warrington. Abe looked up suddenly. What kind of Chinese talk is that, Morris? He said, Rut-on. That's no Chinese talk, Abe, Morris replied. It's printed right here on the policy. The Rut-on Earl of Warrington is president of the board of directors, Abe. And supposing we should maybe, for example, have a fire, Abe, what would show we stand it with this here Rut-on Earl of Warrington? Abe grabbed the policy, which bore on its reverse side the list of directors, headed by the name of that distinguished statesman and cabinet minister, the Right Honorable Earl of Warrington. J. Blaustein will fix it for us, Abe replied. J. Blaustein, Morris jeered. I suppose, Abe, him and the Rut-on Earl of Warrington drinks coffee together every afternoon when J. Blaustein makes a trip to Manchester, England, ain't it? No, Abe, you are up against a poor proposition, and I hope you ain't paid for that policy, Abe. J. Blaustein ain't in no hurry, Abe said. We never pay him inside of 60 days anyway. Well, we ain't going to pay him for that policy inside of 60 days or 660 days neither, Abe. We're going to fire that policy back on him, Abe, because I got it here a policy for $10,000 which Rudy Feinholz just brought at me, Abe. And we are insured in a good American company, Abe. The Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company of Arizona. Abe shrugged his shoulders. Why should we insure a stock of cloaks and suits by farmers and ranchers, Morris? He asked. Ain't it better we should insure our goods by farmers and ranchers as by somebody what we don't know what he does for a living, like the Rut-on Earl of Warrington? Morris retorted. But when it comes right down to it, Morris, Abe said, how are we better off, supposing we got to go all the way to Arizona to collect our money? That's what I told the young Feinholz, Morris replied, and he says, supposing we should, so to speak, have a fire, he guarantees that we would collect our money, every cent of it, right here in New York. And anyhow, Abe, any objections what you got at this here farmers and ranchers policy wouldn't be no use anyhow. No, Abe said. Why not? Because I just sent it Rudy Feinholz a check for the premium, Morris said, and walked out of the showroom before Abe could enunciate all the profanity that rose to his lips. Louis Feinholz's order was shipped the following week, and with it went the cape for his show window. Abe himself superintended the packing, for business was dull in the firm's showroom. A particularly warm March had given way to a frigid, rainy April, and now that the promise of an early spring had failed of fulfillment, cancellations were coming in thick and fast. Hence, Abe took rather a pessimistic view of things. "I bet you Feinholz will have it yet some kicks about them goods, Mawruss," he said. "When I come down to Feinholz's street this morning, Mawruss, it looked like Johnstown after the flood. I bet you Feinholz ain't making enough in that store just now to pay electric light bills." "I don't know about that, Abe," said Morris. "Louis carries a mighty attractive line in his windows. Them small Fifth Avenue stores ain't got nothing on 'em when it comes to line of sample garments he carries in the show windows, Abe." "Sure, I know," Abe rejoined, "but he ain't got nothing on one of them piker stores when it comes right down to the stock he carries on the inside, Morris. Yes, Morris, when I sell goods to a feller like Feinholz, Morris, I'm afraid for my life until I get my money." "Well, you needn't be afraid for Feinholz, Abe," said Morris, "because in the first place the feller has got a fine rating, and then again he couldn't fire them goods back on us because for the price there ain't a better made line in the country." "I hope you're right, Morris," Abe replied, as he rang the bell for the freight elevator. "It would be a fine comeback if he should return them goods on us after we give his nephew the insurance we did." Again he pressed the elevator bell. "What's the matter with that elevator, Morris?" he said. "Takes a year to get a package onto the sidewalk." "That's on account of somebody moves in downstairs, Abe," Morris answered. "Kaskel Schwartz, what used to be a foreman for Pinkel Brothers. Him and Mo Feigl goes as partners together in skirts." "Is that so?" Abe said, jamming his thumb on the elevator bell. "I hope you don't got that cigarettel habit." At length the elevator arrived, and Jake, the shipping clerk, carried out the brown paper parcels comprising Feinholz's shipment. "If that's the last I've seen of them garments," Abe said as he returned to the showroom, "I'm a lucky man." "Always you're beefing about something happening what ain't going to happen, Abe," Morris retorted. "Just a few minutes since you hoped Kaskel Schwartz ain't going to be careless about cigarettels, and now you're imagining things about Feinholz sending back the goods." "Never mind, Morris," Abe replied. "In 2 days' time I shall breathe easier yet." For the rest of the day it rained in a steady tropical downpour, and when Abe came downtown the next morning the weather had moderated only slightly. "Yes, Morris," he said as he entered, "that's a fine weather for a cloak business, Morris. I bet you, Morris, if we was making cravats and umbrellas yet we'd be having a long dry spell." He heaved a great sigh and approached the bookkeeper's desk where Morris had laid the morning mail. "Did you hear from those suckers out in Kansas City what made the kick about them London smokes, Morris?" he asked. "Sure I did," Morris replied. "They says they decided to keep the goods." "I guess it left off raining in Kansas City," Abe commented. "Them suckers only made that kick because they thought they couldn't sell nothing in wet weather." "Any other kicks, Morris?" "Yes," Morris replied shortly. Abe looked up. "Louis Feinholz," he gasped. Morris nodded and handed Abe a letter. It read as follows: "The Longchamps, L. Feinholz, proprietor. Everything for Madame. New York, April 1st, 1908. Gents, your shipment of the state arrived, and we must say we are surprised at the goods which you sent us. They are in no respect up to sample, which we keep pending a settlement of any differences which we might have in respects to this matter. Yours truly, L. Feinholz. Dictated LF to RC." "What does that sucker mean, Morris?" Abe asked. "We ain't sent him no sample of them capes, Morris. We made 'em up according to his instructions, Morris, ain't it?" Morris nodded solemnly, and again Abe read the letter. This time he dashed the note to the floor and grew purple with rage. "Why," he choked, "that sucker must mean it the window sampler." Again Morris nodded solemnly. "But a 10-year-old child could tell them garments ain't like the window sampler, Morris," Abe went on. "Sure, I know," Morris replied sadly, "and a district court judge could tell it too. Also a jury by the city court could tell it, Abe. And also I rung up Henry D. Feldman and asked him if he could take a case for us against Louis Feinholz, and Feldman says that Feinholz is such an old client that he couldn't do it. And that's the way it goes." "But them capes was never intended to be the same like the sample, Morris," Abe cried. That's what I told Louis Feinholz when I rung him up after I spoke to Feldman. And Feinholz says he got the goods and he got the sample, and that's all he knows about it. Then I asked him if he didn't say it distinctly, we should make up a first-class, expensive window sampler and ship it along with the order, and he says he don't remember it and that I should show him in writing. Ain't you got it in writing? Abe asked. I ain't got no writing about the window sampler, Abe, Morris replied. I only got it writing about the order. But ain't you got no witnesses, Morris? Abe asked. Witnesses? I got plenty, Abe, Morris answered. And so has Feinholz got its witnesses. What's the use witnesses when all Feinholz has got to do is to get Henry D. Feldman to make theater acting over that sample? For you know as well as I do, Abe, anyone would see them garments as doch anyway, a cheap imitation of that window sample, Abe. At this juncture, Jake, the shipping clerk, entered. Mr. Potash, he said, here comes Margulies' Harlem Express with them packages what we shipped in the Longchamp store yesterday. Should I take 'em in? Abe jumped to his feet. Did Margulies bring 'em up? He asked. He had 'em just now in the elevator, Jake replied. Wait, I'll go with you, Abe said. Together they walked rapidly toward the freight elevator, which opened into the cutting room. But before they reached the door, a shrill outcry arose from the floor below. The East Side slogan of woe, Oi Gewalt, blended with women's shrieks, and at length came the cry, Fire! Fire! Simultaneously, Miss Cohen, the bookkeeper, lifted up her voice in strident despair, while a great cloud of black smoke puffed from the elevator shaft, and the next moment Abe, Morris, Jake, and the half-dozen cutters were pushing their way downstairs, elbowed by the frenzied mob of operators, male and female. When they arrived at the ground floor, the engines were clanging around the corner, and Abe and Morris ran across the street to the opposite sidewalk. Suddenly, an inarticulate cry escaped Abe, and he sank onto a convenient dry goods box. "What's the trouble, Abe?" Morris asked. "Are you sick?" "The policies," Abe croaked, and closed his eyes. When he opened them a minute later, his partner grinned at him reassuringly. "I got him in my breast pocket, Abe," Morris said, "and as soon as I seen the smoke, I grabbed him and I locked up the safe with the books inside." Abe revived immediately. "That reminds me, Morris," he said as he took a cigar from his waistcoat pocket. "What become of Miss Cohen?" 20 minutes later the fire was extinguished, and Abe and Morris returned to their loft. The first person to greet them was Miss Cohen, and aside from a slight careening of her pompadour, she seemed none the worse for her dangerous experience. "Mr. Potash," she said in businesslike tones, "the Longchamp store just rung up and says about them garments what they returned that it was all a mistake and that they was all right and you should reship 'em right away." The showroom was flooded with sunlight, and a mild spring breeze had almost dissipated the acrid smell of smoke. "What did I tell you, Morris?" Abe said. "Feinholz is like them suckers in Kansas City. He was scared he couldn't sell them capes in wet weather, and now it's cleared up fine he wants 'em bad, Morris. I'll go and see what happened to him." He hustled off toward the rear of the loft, while Morris turned to Miss Cohen. "Well, Miss Cohen," he said, "how did you make out by the fire just now?" Miss Cohen blushed and patted her pompadour. "Oh, Mr. Perlmutter," she said, "I was scared stiff, and Mr. Margulies, the expressman, pretty near carried me to the roof, and we stays there until the fireman says we should come down." "And where's Margulies?" Morris asked. "He's gone back to the cutting room," Miss Cohen replied. "When he seen the smoke coming up, he shuts quick the iron door of the freight elevator, and everything's all right in the cutting room, only a little water by the elevator shaft." "And how about the packages from Feinholz?" Morris continued. But before Miss Cohen could reply, Abe burst into the showroom with a broad grin on his face. "That's a good joke on Feinholz, Morris," he said. "All the fire was in the elevator shaft, and them garments what he returned at us is nothing but ashes." "But Abe," Morris began, when the telephone bell trilled impatiently, and Abe took up the receiver. "Hello?" he said. "This is Potash." "Oh, hello, Feinholz." "Say, Potash," Feinholz said at the other end of the wire, "we got the store full of people here. Couldn't you send them capes right away?" Abe put his hand over the mouthpiece of the phone. "It's Feinholz," he said to Morris. "He wants them capes right away. What should I tell him?" "Tell him nothing," Morris cried. "The first thing you know he'll say something to that fella, and he sues us yet for damages because we didn't deliver the goods." Abe hesitated for a minute. "You talk to him," he said at length. Morris seized the receiver from his partner. "Hello, Feinholz," he yelled. "We don't want nothing to say to you at all. We are through with you. That's all. Goodbye." He hung up the receiver and turned to Abe. "When I deal with a crook like Feinholz," he said, "I'm afraid for my life." 10 minutes later he went out to lunch, and when he returned he brandished the early edition of an evening paper. "What do you think it says here, Abe?" he cried. "It says the fire downstairs was caused by an operator throwing a cigarette in the clipping bin. Ain't that a coincidence, Abe?" "I bet you that's a coincidence," Abe replied. "A couple of more of them coincidences, Morris, and we got to pay double for our insurance. I only wish we would be finished collecting on our policies for this here coincidence, Morris." Morris shrugged his shoulders and was about to make a reassuring answer when the door opened and two men entered. One of them was Samuel Feder, vice president of the Kosciuszko Bank, and the other was Louis Feinholz, proprietor of the Longchamp store. "Well, Abe," Feder cried, "what's this I hear about the fire?" "Come into the office, Mr. Feder," Abe cried, while Morris greeted Feinholz. "Morris will be through soon." "Say, Morris," Feinholz said, "what's the matter with you boys? Here I got to come downtown about them capes, and my whole store is full of people. Why don't you ship them capes back to me like I told you?" "Look at here, Feinholz," Morris exclaimed in tones sufficiently loud for Feder to overhear. "What do you take us for anyhow? Greenhorns? You think you could write us a dirty letter like that and then come down and get them capes just for the asking?" "Ain't you getting touchy all of a sudden, Morris?" Feinholz cried excitedly. "You had no business to deliver them goods in such rotten weather. You know as well as I do that I couldn't use them goods till fine weather sets in, and now I want 'em, and I want 'em bad." "Is that so?" Morris replied. "Why, I thought them garments was no good, Feinholz. I thought them capes wasn't up to sample." "What are you talking about?" Feinholz shouted. "Them goods was all right. The sample's all right, too. All I want now is you should ship 'em right away. I can sell the lot this afternoon if only you get 'em up to my store in time." Morris waved his hand deprecatingly. "It's enough, Feinholz," he said. "You got as much show of getting them goods as though you never ordered 'em." "Why not?" Feinholz cried. "Because them goods got burned up on our freight elevator this morning," Morris replied. "What?" Feinholz gasped. "That's what I said," Morris concluded. "And if you excuse me, I got some business to tend to." Feinholz turned and almost staggered from the store, while Morris joined his partner and Sam Feder in the firm's office. Feder had overheard the entire conversation and greeted Morris with a smile. "Well, Morris," he said, "it serves that sucker right. A fellow what confesses right up and down that the goods was all right and then he fires them back at you just because the weather was rotten ought to be sued yet." "What do we care?" Abe replied. "We got him insured, and so long as we got our money out of him, we would rather not be bothered with him." "Did you have any other damages, boys?" Feder asked, with a solicitude engendered of a $10,000 accommodation to Potash and Perlmutter's debit on the books of the Kosciuszko Bank. "Otherwise, everything's okay," Morris replied cheerfully. Together they conducted Feder on a tour of their premises, and after he was quite reassured, they presented him with a good cigar and ushered him into the elevator. "I guess you put your foot in it with Feinholz, Morris," Abe said after Feder had departed. "How can we go to that kid nephew of his now and ask him to adjust the loss, Morris?" Morris arched his eyebrows and stared at his partner. "What's the matter with you anyway, Abe?" he asked. "Ain't J. Blaustein good enough for you? Ain't J. Blaustein always done it our insurance business up to now all okay, Abe? And now that we got it our very first fire, why should we want to throw Blaustein down?" Abe put on his hat, thoroughly abashed. "I thought we got to get Rudy Feinholz to adjust at the loss," he said. "Otherwise I wouldn't have suggested it. But anyway, I'll go right down to Blaustein and see what he says." Morris jumped to his feet. "Wait," he said. "I'll go with you." Half an hour afterward, Abe and Morris were seated in J. Blaustein's office on Pine Street, recounting the details of the fire. "How many garments was there?" Blaustein asked. $48, and we figured up the loss at $12.50 apiece," Morris explained. "That's what we billed him to Feinholz for." Blaustein frowned. "But looky here, Perlmutter," he said, "them insurance companies won't pay you what you're going to sell them garments for. They'll only pay you what they cost to make up. They'll figure it so much cloth, say $50, so much trimming, say $40, so much labor, say $30, and that's the way it goes." "But how can we prove that to the company, Mr. Blaustein?" Abe protested. "There ain't enough left of them garments to show even what color they was." Blaustein rose to his feet. "Well, gentlemen," he said, "we'll discuss that later. The first thing we must do is go up and see young Feinholz. That Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company is a pretty close corporation. Louis Feinholz's brother out in Arizona is the president, and they got such a board of directors that if they printed the names on the back of the policy, it would look like the roster of an East Side Free Burial Society. Also, this here Rudy Feinholz, what acted as your broker, is also general agent, adjuster, and office manager for the Metropolitan District. And, taking it by and large, you gentlemen is lucky you came to me instead of him to adjust this loss." Rudy Feinholz's insurance business occupied what had once been the front parlor of a high-stoop brownstone residence. Similarly, the basement dining room had been converted into a delicatessen store, and the smoked meats, pickles, cheeses, and spices with which it was stocked provided rather a strange atmosphere for the metropolitan agency of the Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company. Moreover, the Italian barber who rented the quondam back parlor was given to practicing on the mandolin, and when Abe, Mawruss, and J. Blaustein entered the metropolitan agency, a very imperfect rendition of Santa Lucia came through the partition and made conversation difficult for the metropolitan agent. "What do you say if we all go round to the Longchamps," he said, "and talk things over?" "I'm agreeable," Morris said, looking at his partner. "Sure thing," Blaustein replied. "That delicatessen store smell is so thick around here that I'm getting ptomaine poisoning." "But," Abe protested, "maybe Louis Feinholz don't want us round there. We ain't on the best of terms with Louis." "That's all right," Rudy Feinholz said. "I arranged with him to bring you round there. Uncle Louis is a heavy stockholder in the Farmers and Ranchers, and—" "It's enough!" Morris cried. "I hear enough about the family history of this here Farmers and Ranchers. It wouldn't make no difference to me if your mother was the vice president and your sister the secretary. All I want is we should settle things up." "Well, come along then," Rudy cried, and the two brokers and their clients repaired to Feinholz's store. Abe and Mawruss entered, not without trepidation, but Louis received them with unaffected amiability. "Well, Mawruss," he said, "that's too bad you got a fire in your place." "We can stand it," Morris replied. "We was insured." Feinholz rejoined, "Yes, you was insured by your loft, but you wasn't insured by your freight elevator." "But by the rules of the Fire Insurance Exchange," Blaustein interrupted, "when a policy reads—" "Why do we care about the Fire Insurance Exchange?" Feinholz broke in. "The Farmers and Ranchers ain't members of the Fire Insurance Exchange. We got a license to do business from the Superintendent of Insurance, and we don't give a cent for the Fire Insurance Exchange. We insured at the loft, and the goods was burnt in the freight elevator." Abe jumped to his feet. "Do you mean," he cried, "that you ain't going to pay us nothing for our fire?" "That's what I mean," Feinholz declared. Morris turned to Abe. "Come, Abe," he said, "we'll take Feder's advice." "Feder's advice?" Feinholz repeated. "You mean that fellow what I seen it in your store this morning?" "That's what I mean," Morris replied. "Feder says to us that we should take it his lawyers, McMaster, Peddle and Crane, and we'd see to it that they wouldn't charge us much." Feinholz smiled. "But the Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company got also a good lawyer," he said triumphantly. "Maybe they have," Morris admitted, "but we ain't got nothing to do with the Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company now. We take it Feder's lawyers and sue you, Feinholz. Feder hears it all what you got to say, and he's willing to go on the stand and swear that you says the goods was all right and the sample was all right. I guess when a banker and a gentleman like Feder swears something, you can get all the Henry D. Feldmans in the world, and it wouldn't make no difference." Feinholz passed his hand over his forehead and breathed hard. "Maybe we could settle the matter, Rudy," he said to his nephew, "if the other companies what they are insured by would contribute their share." "The other companies," Morris announced, It's got nothing to do with it. You fired them goods back at us, and that's the reason why they got damaged, so we wouldn't ask for a cent from the other companies." "Then it is positively all off," cried Feinholz as one of his saleswomen entered. She held a familiar garment in her hand. In the dim light of Feinholz's private office, the buttons and soutache with which the cape was adorned sparkled like burnished gold. "Mr. Feinholz," she said, "a lady saw this on one of the racks, and she wants to know how much it costs." Morris eyed the cape for one hesitating moment, and then he sprang to his feet and snatched it from the astonished saleswoman. "You tell the customer," he said, "that this here cape ain't for sale." He rolled it into a tight bundle and thrust it under his coat. "Now, Feinholz," he declared calmly, "I got you just where I want you. Feder is willing to go on the stand and swear that you said them goods was up to sample, and this here is the sample. Any fellow that knows anything about the cloak and suit trade can tell in a minute that these here samples cost $25 to make up. 48 times 25 is $1,200, and so sure as you are sitting there, Feinholz, Abe and me will commence suit against you for $1,200 the first thing tomorrow morning, unless we get it a certified check from the Farmers and Ranchers Insurance Company for $600, which is the price what you agreed to pay us for the garments." A moment later Blaustein and Abe followed him to the sidewalk. "Well, Blaustein," Morris asked as they walked to the elevated railroad on their way home, "what do you think of it all, huh?" "I think it's a good bluff you are making," Blaustein replied, "but it may work. So if you come right down to my office, I'll fix up your proof of loss and send it to them this afternoon." The next morning Abe and Morris reached their loft a good hour ahead of the letter carrier, and when he entered they both made a grab for the mail, which he handed them. Morris went out, and as he shuffled the letters with the deftness of long pinochle experience, he emitted a cry. "What is it?" Abe asked. For answer, Morris tore open a long yellow envelope and flicked it up and down between his thumb and finger until a small piece of paper fluttered to the carpet. Abe swooped down on it immediately and ran to the office, hugging it to his breast. It was a certified check for $600. "Well, Abe," Morris said as he filled out a deposit slip of the Kosciuszko Bank, "there's one feller comes out of this deal pretty lucky, all considering." "Who's that, Morris?" Abe asked. "The Rut on Earl of Warrington," Morris replied. End of chapter 13.